Listen, I get it. The allure of running Etsy ads is really hard to avoid, especially the longer that you sell on Etsy. What if I keep throwing money at Etsy ads? Will it help me get more sales? What if I keep increasing my budget over time or right away, max out my budget? What if I treat it like a piggy bank and just throw as much money at it as possible? Etsy won't let me lose a bunch of money, right? Wrong. Etsy ads are a really, really great way to lose money and get turned upside down in your Etsy business, especially if you're just starting out. So today I want to give you 5 tips to help you find success with Etsy ads and not lose a bunch of money. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, what is happening? What is going on? Welcome back to the Handmade and Beyond podcast. Glad to be back with you. I'm LL, your host, your guide through the murky waters of what we call Etsy. I'm glad to be back with you guys. I have another really good episode for you. Hopefully you're doing awesome. Hopefully you're taking action in your Etsy business. And I want to bring you another good episode to hopefully help give you some insight and alleviate some stress, some frustration when it comes to Etsy ads specifically. And before we get started, I have something for you. As usual, I like to give you something that pairs nicely with these episodes. And today I have an Etsy ads cheat sheet for you. So it's a checklist to help you get started with Etsy ads and find success and really alleviate some of the pain points and misconceptions when it comes to Etsy ads. So make sure you guys download that free cheat sheet at handmadeandbeyond.com/Etsy ads. It'll help you guys out, and it goes over a lot of what I talk about and more in this episode. So today, let's dive right in. I want to give you five tips, 5 success tips on Etsy ads and running Etsy ads and how to at least try and find success when it comes to Etsy ads, because a lot of people struggle with them. A lot of people really don't understand them fully. A lot of people run them when they shouldn't be running them. So that's why I want to do this episode as kind of a refresher for you guys, especially if you are thinking about doing Etsy ads, you just started Etsy, or you're just really kind of not sure. This should help you out. So the first tip I have for you, and this is something I've talked about many times before, Etsy ads do not fix bad listings. They will amplify a bad listing, and amplify meaning they will show your bad listings to more people because you're paying them money. But that doesn't mean that people are going to buy if it's a bad listing. You're basically just setting a dumpster on fire. Doesn't mean that it's not garbage in there just because you set it on fire. So you got to make sure your listings are good. You're following all the best practices for creating good listings. Again, this is something I've talked about in previous episodes. You got to make sure your pictures are high quality, your descriptions are good, your pricing is on point, and you're offering a product that people want, that people are looking for, that there's an audience for, that people want to buy. If you didn't do the proper legwork, if you didn't put the time and the energy and the quality into your listings, spending money and throwing money at it isn't going to do it any good. You're just going to lose that money and be worse off than you were before. So don't be lazy when it comes to creating your listings, and especially if you're going to run ads. A lot of people do put up listings haphazardly, and they want to take the easy way out. And I'm going to throw some money at it, and then it will sell when I didn't really spend a lot of time creating that listing. No, that's not a good way to look at it, especially if you're just starting out. You're probably making mistakes that you don't realize yet. So ads are not the right way to go right away. Down the road, maybe yes, but right away you need to learn the ins and outs of running your Etsy business, the workflows, getting creating products, sending out products. There's a lot of things to learn and refine and get better at early on. So spending advertising dollars is not a priority, especially if you're a newbie. It should not be a priority. So make sure if you're going to run ads that you're familiar with the best practices. You have the best SEO, search engine optimization, which comes down to keywords, how you're targeting audiences, your pictures, your descriptions, all the stuff that goes into a quality listing. Got to make sure that stuff's good, or Etsy ads will not work. Big, huge mistake that people make when it comes to Etsy ads. Number 2 is Etsy ads do not work for all niches and all listings. All right. So just because you may have the greatest listing in the world, the best pictures, if you run ads to it, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to make more sales. It's one of those things that you may or may not make more sales. You got to give yourself the best chance of success by having a quality listing. But just because you throw money at it doesn't mean it's going to make more sales. So you got to test the waters, but get prepared first. It will help give you the best opportunity of making sales. It doesn't mean that it's going to make sales. Some listings and some niches they don't do good when advertised. That's just the way that it is. They may not need to be advertised. It just may not do good. You may have a certain portion of your listings do well, the other portion does terrible, even if it's the same niche. There's not necessarily a rhyme or reason to it. That's why it's important to test and see how things are going to do. Also, some niches may not even need advertising to be successful. Depending on how niche down you are, the target market may be large enough, but your competition may be small enough where you're already ranking for all the customers coming your way. You're already ranking on the top pages, the first page, and they're buying your stuff anyhow. Your advertising is not creating any more sales because you don't need to do it. If you already have a corner of the market, which I'm going to preface with is very rare to find a market or a niche with low competition and high search volume. Usually most areas that have high search volume, there's a lot of competition. You might find like, medium, medium search competition with lower, or medium search volume, lower competition. But high search volume, people have found those niches. There's a lot of competition. Doesn't mean you can't be successful. So just keep that in mind. Your niche and your listings do play a part in how successful you're going to be with Etsy ads. And it's not a given, depending on whatever listings you have or whatever niche. Even if you are doing all the stuff behind the scenes right, you may or may not do well when it comes to advertising. So you just have to test that out and see how they do. If they don't do good over time, you got to turn them off. You got to manage it, and you can't. It's not a one and done. You got to continuously manage it, just like you have to continuously manage your Etsy business and your listings that aren't being advertised. All right. That brings us to number 3. Your best sellers do not always perform the best when advertised. This kind of goes back to what I was just saying, but just because they are selling better organically doesn't mean when you throw money at them, they're going to do better. Some will, some won't. It's a funny thing, right? You're like, well, these are selling good organically. I'm going to throw money at them and they're probably going to sell even more. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It's a kind of a very frustrating and infuriating thing, right? Intuitively, you would think that would work, but it doesn't always work, and it's very weird. I've had it happen many times where my best sellers, I've had to turn off advertising because they just aren't performing. It's eating up all my budget, and people aren't buying them more. They do better organically. It's very odd, but best sellers are a good place to start when advertising. You got to follow the breadcrumbs that your audience and your customers are giving you, and that's a good place to start. But just keep in mind that if you're only advertising your best sellers, you may be missing the boat on some other listings that could do really well when advertised. For whatever reason, their organic reach isn't enough to make sales, but when you advertise them, it gives it a little bit more oomph and you're getting more sales, which organically they don't do as well. It's weird. I know. I get it. It's infuriating. It's weird. You test, you figure this stuff out as you go along. You're not going to come out the gate being successful with all the listings that you're advertising and killing it. And that's why you have to use these tactics that I'm giving you, these steps, and then you're going to get better over time. I promise you that. All right. That brings us to number 4. If you don't have an audience, advertising won't do a thing. And I got a little choked up because you need an audience. You're killing me if you don't have an audience. If you don't know your target audience, who you're marketing to, advertising is not going to do any good because it's inflating what you're already not doing correctly. So if you're in a desert, you're yelling for help, no one's going to hear you. You find a microphone, you're yelling for help through the microphone. The same thing happens. No one's going to hear you. No one's going to find you. That happens with Etsy. If you don't have the right audience, if you're not targeting the right audience through the right keywords, the right SEO, and you amplify that with ads, the same thing is going to happen. You're just going to be wasting money and no one's still going to find you. So you got to have a clearly defined audience. You got to know who you're targeting, and that kind of equates to what keywords you're using, what products you're creating. If you're all over the place, if you're not niched down enough, if you have like 1,000 different audiences, it's not going to work out too well for you. If you try to market to everybody, you market to nobody. It's an old cliche marketing adage, but it's very true. You got to have a niche. You got to have a target audience. That usually comes from niching down and having a specific audience in mind when you're marketing to them, and amplifying that will then help you. If you're amplifying, you don't even know what you're amplifying because you're not sure your audience, that's not going to work out too well. So that's really, really important. And that brings us to number 5, which is the biggest tip of all, is start smart. Smart with start with a small budget and manage that budget over time, and manage your campaign over time. All right, Etsy will naturally give you a smaller budget, but after a couple of weeks, they're going to start ramping up that budget. They may give you a $10 budget. The next week it's going to be $50. The next week it's going to be $100 if you keep increasing your budget. That doesn't mean that you should be increasing your budget. All right? Just because Etsy gives it to you doesn't mean you should take it. That will basically start eating away how much money you're spending. And if you're not managing your budget accordingly, you're going to lose a lot of money and not make any more sales. Especially if you're just starting advertising, stick with a small budget. Manage your campaign. Look at how your listings are performing over time. Deactivate listings that are being advertised over time if they're not performing. But you got to give it some time. You can't manage this on a day-to-day basis. I recommend managing on a 30-day basis. I know a lot of people are in there messing with things daily. I know some people have found success doing it that way. I don't recommend doing that. Just like you shouldn't mess with your listings daily, you shouldn't mess with advertising daily. Just because the algorithm doesn't know what the heck you're doing. So it's going to be all over the place with how it's spending your money. And it's just, I don't think that's a good way to kind of look at it. So you should manage to trends, and you really can't get a good idea of trends after a couple of days. You got to look at it on a weekly and preferably a 30-day basis is how you should be managing your advertising, managing your listings, managing everything. And depending on what you're seeing, you may give it more time. You may give it less time. But you got to be managing that. Don't be just don't keep increasing your budget, increasing your budget. Now, if your budget's performing well, if your return on ad spend is good, yeah, of course, keep managing, keep increasing your budget, but do it incrementally. Don't do it from $5 to $25, and do it from 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20. All right. Don't do it all at once, because then the algorithm's going to go crazy, spend all your money. And that's not what you want. That's not what you want to do. And your return on ad spend is basically how many dollars you're spending, how much money you're getting in return. So if you spend $1, how much money are you getting in return? That's your return on ad spend. So preferably, you should at least be a 3 or higher. Over 5 is pretty good on a return. So if you're spending $1 on ads, you're making $3. That's a 300% return on ad spend, or a 3-to-1 ratio. That's not bad, but depending on your profit margin, depending on a lot of other factors, that may not be enough for you. That may not be good. So this is, again, you can't put a blanket number on every single niche, because everyone's different as far as how they run their business, what their profit margin is. You may need more. Ads may not work for you if you're only getting a 3-to-1 return. You may need a 5. And that's something that you can adjust and kind of work towards, but you got to start somewhere. It's not going to be perfect coming out of the gate. You're not going to get a huge return on ad spend coming out of the gate. So you got to look at that incrementally and kind of see how you're doing, make improvements, and you'll get better at it over time. But that is it, guys. Those are the 5 tips to hopefully find more success when it comes to ads, or at least put you on the right foot when you're getting ready to start ads. So number 1, Etsy ads don't fix bad listings. Number 2, Etsy ads don't work for all niches and all listings. Number 3, your best sellers do not always perform well when advertised. Number 4, you got to find a target audience. You got to know your target audience before advertising. That was number 4. I'm lost. I think I said number 4. Whatever. That was number 4. And number 5 is start with a small budget and manage your budget and campaign over time. Following those tips will definitely give you the ammunition to do better when it comes to Etsy ads, to kind of alleviate some of the stress and unknowns. So hopefully that helps you guys out. Make sure you guys get that free checklist at handmadeandbeyond.com/Etsy ads, the checklist to help give you the best practices and the strategies to do better when running Etsy ads. And that's what I want for you guys. So hopefully that helps you out. I'll be back soon with another good episode for you guys. Have an amazing rest of your day.